Well, you might be one of those people. Okay? But what we get up here is a look at what the ideals are. And we don't assume that whatever this is up here is what we face in here, particularly these cheap plastic things. Right? You see what I mean? I mean, that's the important piece, that there is an ideal, original, definitional chair. Right? That's really important. That all things that we call chairs have to have some sort of participation. But that doesn't mean they look like it. It might mean that they function like it. Right? That you have something you can sit down on there. Right? So it's almost like, I'm running out of space here. But like, it's like if if there's the form of chair sitting up here, it's like all other chairs in some way are all like, there's different expressions of that thing. If you make something and you call it a chair and you can't sit on it, right? It's untrue, unjust, whatever. It doesn't have the virtue, right? So all chairs that are effective have to be participating in this. So that big mother chair is like standing behind all of these things here. But it's not tangible, it's like you can't see it. Right? But all of these things are participating.
So once the philosopher king or whoever like reaches onto some theos and reaches this knows what the forms of good are, it's there when they come to like the understanding, like the practicalness is part of it too. Are they trying to get everyone else to understand, not to understand, but to practice to the true form?
Some of them might be teachers. I mean, if that's, they might be, some of them might enter into the process of teaching the guardians that are like subsequently.
To like share.
But it's not like, a lot of the assumptions that other folks aren't going to understand this. Like there's no,
yeah.
Remember the cave thing when you tried to share that knowledge with the people back, what happened? You beat them down, right? And yeah, I'm just saying. So the part of it is like, they got something that they can't share in its purity with everybody else. But we trust that they've got something, and we follow them for that reason. Right? And where chair is a relatively trivial example, though you can imagine how art, like if you've ever been in like a modern art museum, right? That deals with like the 1920s and 1930s Europe. There might be certain things that are called chairs. Right? There might be certain furniture that's in there that might not function all that well as the things that they're claimed to be. All right, so you can see how somebody with wisdom and knows what the true chair is, what its definition is, what its purpose is, and all that, and can make judgments about what's a good one and what's a bad one. Right? Could potentially be at odds with an artist. Let's move over to this imitation thing. So what were Muhammad, did you say there's 3 classes of imitators? Yeah. Mimesis, like mimic, right? This is like the root for like mimic. Imitation thing. So what were the 3 classes?
Like painter, carpenter, and then God. Like those were the 3 classes.
And what was the last one?
God.
So
like craftsman, poet.
I guess that was good. And here, we're talking about like an intellectual version of God here, not like Zeus at this point. So we got craftsmen, and we got artisans, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, what does a craftsman do? Like, what's the essence of their imitation?
They're like they see an object and craftsmen are like people who actually make the couch.
They actually make this stuff.
They make the couch, so like. They are like one fold removed from the God in a way.
Right, so God is kind of this realm is where the reality is, right? And then the people that get an opportunity to get up there can kind of get that, right?
Yeah.
So this is kind of the philosopher kings. But the craftsmen their virtue is being able to make this stuff. So they're connected to the end user and to the reality where this thing is going to be displayed its virtue of chairness. And it effectively holds people up when they want to see it. And so Plato kind of likes these folks and juxtaposes them to the poet. And he likes these folks because at least they're dealing, this is that praxis part, they're the connection, right, between this theoretical world. They're one of the connections between the theoretical stuff. Though they've never seen that. So odds are they're not imitating or they're not inspired by a view of the ideal chair, right? Odds are they just studied a whole bunch of chairs that exist, and they've determined this is the one I want to make today. You see what I'm saying? But they're good at doing that. And what are poets? What's their brand? So this is once removed, though. That's the whole thing. Like this, or this is twice removed. What's a poet?
Poets are like three folds removed, where they're just trying to like, they don't even have an idea of what the instrument is. They're just creating an image of what it might be. So like these are the people he talks against about, like he's like, they don't even like, they might not even be aware of the materials that they make that they needed to make the couch, but it's just an imitation of what they think the couch is. So they're just like trying to imitate the entire thing, like how what it is or what it means to be someone or like society.
So the artisan makes this thing that's actually useful and lean back, right? What does the painter make? What are the poet? What are the artisan class?
Makes that picture. Like,
they make a picture of this. Can you sit on the picture of a chair? I mean, you might be able to pull it off the wall and lay it flat. You know what I'm saying? But if we don't allow for that ridiculous state of affairs. So it doesn't have any, so if the chair's function is to be able to be, right, that's their function. That's a part of it. The definitional stuff, that's a part of its essence, whatever language you want to use. When you make a picture of it, visually it's a chair, but can it function the way the chairs are supposed to function? It's kind of a bastard child. It's this weird thing. This is part, so do you see the separation between, for Plato, what an artist does, an artistic rendition, that's one kind of imitation, versus the imitation that an artisan does, and why he would see virtue in what the artisan does, and not see virtue in what the actual art, what the artist, you'd be singing about it. This, oh, I saw this great chair once, and it's all great, but those words don't function. I can't sit on those words. It can be sweet, sounding and all that good stuff, but I can't sit on those words. They don't provide the function. I mean, there's also a third piece on this too, which is, remember when I talked about inspiration back towards the beginning of class? Because part of this is, what do they actually know? You claim that the craftsmen have to know something, right, about chairs to make a chair that actually works, right? But what they don't know is about the form of the chair. They don't know that. But they've studied other chairs. They learned from other people who make other chairs, so they know something. So craftsmen have some knowledge of chairs. Poets, they don't have knowledge. Now remember, this is a philosopher talking about the poets. So the philosophers have knowledge. They can make judgments between what function does the chair or doesn't have. They can make those judgments. What's this inspiration thing that I talked about a while ago? Does anybody remember that? Molly?
Like the poets get inspiration from the gods, but they don't understand, and they just reverberate it. It's like they're almost possessed.
It's exactly, they are possessed.
So they reverberate it, but they don't understand it.
They don't know what they're talking about. It's because they use the words, and just because the words sound great. It's because Zeus came into their lungs and you kind of used them. Right? Like they're speaking in tongues or something. They kind of use them to get something out, because the gods can't speak to us directly or we just die. Right? So use them, but they don't really have any knowledge of the things that they do. So that also is a part of this thing. Because remember, a lot of this is a critique of the poets. So there is the whole thing. The poets, no matter how spellbinding they are, and when he goes, we're going to the myth of earlier, he even grants that, the stories the poets tell are good stories. They're entertaining. They're persuasive because of it. But that doesn't mean they know anything if we reserve knowledge to what the philosophers get. You see what I'm saying? And that's kind of one of his, that's kind of like his coup de grace on why, one, it's philosophers that should be running the show. Right? And second of all, that the educational system that he puts forth, which is a philosophical training, should supersede the training that had been going on there, which was done through what? Poetry, the epics, the singer of tales, drama. You see what I'm saying? So that's his last kind of final argument at that point. The argument is complete now for him, that the world should be run by philosophers for all the reasons stated, and this was his final kick to get rid of the poets. So then he ends the Republic with a poem. Did anybody find that weird? I mean, other than that last little paragraph thing, the last thing that is said, or the last thing that is shared with us, the last argument that's being made is poetry. It's an old story. All right? What's the myth of Ur? What is the myth of Ur about? I mean, fundamentally, why do you think he told this story? Why do you think he told this story?
Well, I mean, I guess it's a question of justice again, in my opinion. But the whole myth is around the simple fact that this guy is killed on the battlefield, but rather than actually going through the process of the afterlife, he's still to watch and observe and just go back and tell about what happened.
So before, and you were one of the people who pointed it out, where for Socrates in the Apology, it was irrational actually to be afraid of death. Or it was the Crichton. It was irrational to be afraid of death, because for all we know, death is great. Right? Here's an attempt, this is what I'm saying, this is not Socrates, even though this is his voice. This is Plato talking about, well, maybe, let's think about what the afterlife might be. And maybe we should actually have some fear about it. Right? That's part of kind of this tale. Right? So, you got to tell a story about the afterlife. That can't be done philosophically. So how does this thing get set up? Like how do we get going with the myth of Ur? You said that, so like who is Ur? Like the actual details of the story itself. Like who is he?
Soldier fighting in war.
Mm-hmm.
When he dies, rather than going straight through the process of death, he watches and then they get more into the fact that you get to choose your next life form.
Yeah. But somebody chose for him to be able to tell us the story of the afterlife. That's what